Thank you everyone for joining us. So today we're going to talk about the value of a flexible, scalable platform. And on the stage we have Michael Schiff from Heroku, Juhi Singh from Coursera, and Cindy Villamil from Sterling Talent Solutions. And so I'm going to ask a few questions. Let's start with some bios. If you can make them brief and Looker specific, that would be great. Maybe tell us a little bit about the companies you work for, how big they are, some of the things that you were using Looker for, anything along those lines.
You want me to start?
Actually, yeah, let's start on the end. Yeah.
Start in the end. Hi, I'm Michael Schiff. I'm the Vice President of Business Operations at Heroku. Heroku is part of Salesforce. We're the application development platform arm for Salesforce. We've been a Looker customer since 2014. We actually were figuring out this morning we were Looker 2 or Looker 3. And the funny story is that I initially didn't really even want to meet with Looker. A friend of ours said, look, there's this new startup in Santa Cruz. They're doing all this cool stuff. You should meet with them. And I was like, oh, great. Somebody trying to change, disrupt a market that's been around for 30 years. So I actually took the meeting with Lloyd and Frank, but I took it against my, right in front of the flight I needed to take. So like a blind date, like if it goes bad, I'm only there for a half an hour. And it actually went so well that we were running late, and Lloyd took me up to the airport in his Tesla, and it was the start of a very wild ride, no pun intended. And yeah, we've been looking at ever since, using Looker ever since, and it's definitely in my top 3 favorite tools of all time. So great to be here. Thanks for joining.
Great.
Hi, my name is Juhi. I've been working as a data engineer in Coursera for the past 2 years. And I remember that when I first joined Coursera, my onboarding project was to deploy a model in Looker. And I had no idea what Looker was. But I think since then, my usage and involvement with Looker has only grown. When we had first started out, we used Looker as an internal BI tool just to serve the employees within Coursera. And then we gradually onboarded our partners to use it as a self-service analytics. And now we use Powered by Looker to serve over 500 of our partners with insights and analytics. So I think our relationship with Looker has grown in the last 3 years that we've been using it, and we've been very happy doing so.
Great.
And I'm Cindy Villamil. I'm the Manager of Business Intelligence at Sterling Talent Solutions, which is a global background screening company. I've been there for almost 3 years now, actually, and the past year has been a big focus of it has been on implementing and deploying Looker client-facing dashboards and visualizations so that our clients can really get a good sense of what's going on in their program, how many people are they getting through the door, and it's been very well received. So the last year has been very busy, but fortunately it's been very productive.
Love to hear that. Cool. So let's start with you, Michael. Can you tell us a little bit about what you see as the value of a flexible data platform? Why are we here?
Use that flexible word that I love so much. We were talking about this. I really don't like words like flexible and powerful and scalable because I think they're overused, or I think they mean different things to different people. So we like to keep it pretty simple and kind of change how I answer the question. I think for all of us, whether you're a data scientist or a data engineer or an analyst, whatever we call ourselves, we at Heroku, and I think Looker looks at it the same way, we really look at 3 things. We look at how do we quickly connect to data that the business wants to gain insight from, and how do we quickly model that, connect and model. And then 2 is how do we take the top-down approach where we want to have these business level metrics that define the business and take that from the definition to actually implement that and then serve it up in a variety of different ways. The dashboards and looks and embeds and so forth. But then the third thing, which we think is the biggest area of either concern or opportunity, is how do you iterate on that? You heard a lot of that, and I took a lot of good notes on that, where you come up with the idea of a metric, and then you go and you model it, you connect to it. Everybody in your company is using it, and then what happens? It changes. And then you have to go through that whole change process. And how are you able to model, or how do you manage that process? A good example for us is we're all about active users at Heroku. Who's active? How long have they been active? Have they gone away? Have they come back? And that's really been changing over time. And the biggest issue is that if you have all of these looks and dashboards and embeds out there, how do you go and you take a metric that's been out there everywhere and go and change it in such a way that it's not going to break or anything you're already doing, be able to inform your user base of the changes and how they should best utilize the data. So if you want to use words like flexible and powerful and scalable, those are the things that, how that manifests itself in kind of our everyday life.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Flexible, I'm in marketing, but I totally hear you.
Okay.
Cool, so next couple questions I'd love to dive into a little bit more philosophical, how you guys think about the operationalizing and productizing of analytics at your organizations. So Juhi, I'd love to hear a bit from you. You've done tech, you've done finance. What is the magic formula for building an analytics platform and getting some of that value?
That's a very good question, actually. So I've worked in finance before, and I've worked in tech now. And one thing that I can definitely say is that data plays a very important role in shaping up your product as well as guiding your business. So if I had to pull an example from finance, for example, we have 10 to 40% of our trades that we put in equity stocks traded through high-frequency trading, which solely depends on how fast can you get the data in, process it, and then fire signals off. And it is very similar in tech as well, where I feel like a lot of the product innovation that you do is guided by data. And I can give you a couple of examples as well that we did in Coursera. So for those of you who don't know, Coursera is an online learning platform. We are in fact the biggest learning platform in terms of registered learners, and you can take anything from courses to degrees. And we recently moved to a subscription-based model where instead of purchasing courses as a one-time payment, you can now subscribe and pay monthly. And what we did not anticipate in the beginning was that moving to a subscription-based model would fundamentally change the way learners were interacting with the courses, in the sense that usually all of our courses run on sessions, like how in your on-campus programs you have spring sessions and fall sessions. We also tend to run on sessions, and the way learners were interacting when they had a one-time payment versus the way learners were interacting when we switched to a subscription-based model was something that was very interesting for us to analyze, and we were very grateful that we had very smart people who were able to tease that information out of the learner behavior. This led us to revamp our entire sessions model, and we launched a sessions V2, which was very successful when it started working in tandem with subscriptions. So I think in these scenarios, data plays a very key role. Regarding the secret formula for success, I think it just is getting a bunch of really smart people who can understand your data and have empathy as well towards what kind of problems are we trying to solve, and keeping the long-term product vision in mind. Is definitely what I would call the secret sauce of success.
Empathy, collaboration, super
Yeah.
important. Cindy, you work at a large enterprise, Sterling Talent Solutions. So can you tell us a little bit about how you think about data at a large scale and how that might change depending on your needs?
Sure. So being an enterprise that's actually 40 years old at this point, we've had a lot of changes over time. So in the last 40 years, we've had mergers, we've had acquisitions, we've built a lot of our fulfillment systems, for example, in-house. And so one way that data really plays a role there is that, well, for one thing, we need to share that data with our clients, which is why we made these customized dashboards for them, right? But then at the same time, the internal departments need to ingest that data to figure out how good is our product doing? How quickly are we getting things back out to our clients? And I'd say the challenges we faced is that because of those multiple applications, platforms, the mergers, the acquisitions, the data is not necessarily uniform by any means. So there's a lot of extra work, I think, that goes into making it flexible, like Mike likes to use the word, making it flexible, making it usable for the different departments and our different customers. So the overall philosophy is let's make our customer happy, right? So you'd be very surprised how data hungry a background screening customer is. And so being able to give them the data as fast as possible in a way that actually makes sense for them without having to just go through spreadsheets has been incredibly valuable and really gave us a competitive advantage.
Awesome. So, Michael, you've been a long-time customer of Looker. Kind of riffing off that, how have your needs changed or evolved over time? What did you not predict that kind of came about, and how did you resolve it?
Yeah, I'm glad you're not calling me the oldest Looker customer anymore. I kind of took offense to that one. But, well, I have some of my team in the audience here. At the risk of being heckled, there are things that I drive every day, concepts that we have. We talk a lot about people, process, and infrastructure. Really what I heard here at the conference is really establishing a data culture. And really what I've learned, the biggest thing I've learned, Looker is a great tool, it's a great platform, but it's just one part of it. The other eye-rolling, obnoxious analogy I use is a three-legged milk stool, where each one of the legs is the people and the process and the infrastructure. And I feel like sometimes we could just get so involved with the tools that we're not really thinking about enabling the people or really working on the process. So that's a big thing that I've learned over time. You got really bright people and really well-meaning customers, but if you're not taking that all into consideration, you're good. You're not even going to be successful. You're probably going to fail. And so a couple of things that we did is we totally ripped off Looker office hours. If any of you ever been down to Santa Cruz, or the kitchen table, if you will, we do that. We were doing it an hour a week, and then we were doing 2 hours a week, and now we have that just for marketing. And it really is a place to train your users to be able to come and have that time to be able to ask those kind of questions. So that's a lot around the people. And then the process, we actually run all of our business meetings off of Looker. And it's kind of surprising. I talked about this 2 years ago in New York, and people were surprised in that when we have the marketing people here and the sales people here, and we have our weekly meeting when we're looking at all the metrics like Elena was showing, we're running it off of Looker dashboards. And what that does is it really establishes a process where you're looking at some standard metrics, but then you can kind of totally go off script and say, well, we haven't really ever looked at it this way before. What is that telling us? And Rachel or Sonali will be like, oh, well, give me a minute, talk about something else. And a minute later, we're able to pull that up. So it's a lot about the process of how not only having the tool, but how you're incorporating that into everyday work life.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you were talking about those weekly meetings. That is the definition of operationalizing this. So
yeah.
It's perfect. So you spoke a little bit, so Cindy.
Yes.
You spoke a little bit about all the different customers that you're serving. You worked as a product manager, you've worked in data science, and now you're doing some strategy work as a strategy manager. So can you tell about how those different perspectives inform your view of what you need from data and how that's changing the way you're interacting with it?
So I would actually say that even though maybe the tools change, the underlying idea is always the same. Really, we just want to empower people to make smarter decisions, right? My corny thing is that I want to make the world a smarter place. I think that will just lead to better decisions overall. And so within the company and externally with our clients, we want to give them as much correct data as possible, right? So we want to make sure that two people within the company who are asking the same question get the same answer. Because you can get a lot of answers from data, and sometimes those answers can actually contradict each other. And that's what you need to be careful of. So with modeling, we want to ensure that anyone within the company is going to come to the same conclusions. We can make the same decisions and insightful decisions. So that's kind of always been the underlying reason for what I do, whether I was as a project manager or a data scientist. It's all about having good data to get insights from.
And how many models do you have? For the entire organization, or?
So that's a good question. We actually have two different main applications or products for our clients. So we have a separate model for each of those, and we're in the process of creating kind of an enterprise data model that will combine anything from fulfillment, CRM information, up to client operational data. So it's a very fun work in progress.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Juhi, you're a data engineer, so you're right at the front lines of data. can you tell us a little bit about how you think about decision making in the short term and long term when you're dealing with all the data that you guys have and all the just different things that could come up with it over time?
That's actually a very good question, because as a data engineer, you're always thinking about whether to invest in more long-term projects, whereas there are always these burning, super urgent questions that people want a short-term solution for, or how we call it, a hacky solution for, that just cook up something and put it in Looker so we can see the data, we want the data. But then you also know that that is not a solution that would work for the long term, and coming up with anything that would serve people for at least the next 3 to 4 years, as long as the model doesn't change, requires a lot of planning, thinking, brainstorming. And we run into this issue all the time, where we want to balance people saying, but we have an obligation and we need to send this data to these people. And then you also were like, but I wanted to work on my long-term project. So I think the solution that we have arrived on is that we want to be thinking of long-term projects, but in order to showcase the value that that project will have, we want to break it into pieces and start working on smaller projects which can be delivered pretty quickly, let's say within the quarter or within 2 quarters, but always having an eye for your long-term vision. That serves 2 purposes. One, it keeps your internal customers happy because they can still see some output of your results. And 2, because people know that there is a long-term plan, even if you don't arrive or don't get to the solution for a particular problem right then, all of your stakeholders will know that you have a plan in place and you have prioritized things. It's not like you have forgotten that they had a request or they had asked you to build this model. It's just going to take a while. So I think that's how we tend to prioritize, and we make sure that we set up some time for long-term projects and set up some time for all the fire drills that happen, which is an integral part of any data person's life. So that's 20, how we deal with it.
20% or something for unexpected events.
Yeah.
And then one master prioritization list across every function. Yeah.
Exactly. So to give you an example, so let's say that we wanted to build an enterprise data model, and we knew that we would not be able to get to all of its components in 1 quarter, but then we decided to first lay out a foundational plan for the entire model, and then work only on a very small component, which was required right then. And that's how we were able to balance between the requirements that had to be satisfied right away versus what we wanted to do as a data engineering team for the long term.
It's like a product management mindset, right?
Yeah, you kind of have to have all kinds of mindset when you are a data engineer. You need to have a product manager mindset. You need to be able to visualize things effectively. You need to know the big data technologies. So it's a pretty sweet spot when it comes to data, I'd say.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Michael, early career advice. What would you tell yourself 20 years ago from today, getting into analytics, operations, data?
Can I use my old man voice? Well, back in the day,
Yeah.
I actually wrote down, I would totally want to change my answer. I think the product management mindset is perfect. I love it when I think I have this great answer and then somebody takes it and makes it far more eloquent. But if I can't use the people, process, infrastructure, or establishing a data culture, I think the biggest thing, and again, we're really day to day, we're really meat and potatoes in how we tackle this. My biggest advice would be is when you're working with your customers to find those metrics and KPIs that are actionable. And one of the things that you see with Looker and when you walk around and you talk to people, it's like, oh, the great thing is it's so easy to go and connect the data and start answering questions. Well, the scary thing, if it be dramatic, is that, well, it's almost too easy sometimes. And I think what happens, you can really get lost in the noise that there's so many questions you can answer. Are you really asking the right questions in the right order? So at Heroku, we have the concept of health of business metrics, and we have 8 of them. We run Heroku on 8 metrics, not 800, not 80, we have 8. And we might have different derivations of that where we drive in and one of them being active users. But one of the things that I do with my team and I empower them to say is when somebody asks them for a metric, we ask, well, what are you going to do with that? And part of it is we genuinely want to know what you're going to be doing with it. But part of it, honestly, if the answer's lame or if the customer doesn't know, we're not doing it. And in the beginning, it was like, what do you mean you're not going to do that? You're here to get us the data. It's like, well, like Juhi was saying, we have a certain amount of time available. We're trying to use it as efficiently as possible. If you can't tell me how you're going to use this piece of data, I'm not going to be ignorant about it, but I'm just not going to spend my time there. And what we found is over time, initially people are a little put off, like, well, who are you? But it really helps train them, and they become more prepared. And when they come to, say, office hours, like I was talking to earlier, they already have the answer waiting. It's like, oh, we need this metric, and what we're going to do with it is. And that just helps so much with just really making sure, like, as a team of operations and analysts, you're working on stuff that really matters, and that those things are not getting lost in the noise. So actionable metrics.
And use the Action Hub, right?
What's that?
Use the Action Hub to operationalize.
Yeah.
Some of the announcements today, kind of interesting.
We've been using the data. I guess we didn't call it the Action Hub, but we've been using data actions for a while now. Yeah.
It's awesome. Cool. And then career advice for anyone that is looking to follow your path.
So the one career advice that my mentor gave me, which I would like to share with everybody, is to have empathy in general. And what that means is that you have empathy for your internal as well as external stakeholders. And that does not mean to always comply with what your stakeholders require. It sometimes means taking hard stances and trying to get to the root of what the underlying pain point or problem is. So if I could give an example, we had loaded these models in Looker. It was working perfectly fine. We had also had a doc out which talked about how to use those models and how to run reports off of it. But we very quickly realized that not a lot of people were able to use it because they did not know that it was available. People would come to us and ask, hey, can I pull this number from Looker? And I was like, sure. And this is the Looker link. Here you go. But then what I realized was that if a lot of people are having the same problem, then that means that there was some issue with them being able to identify that this was already present in Looker. And the reason was that we did not have a very good onboarding structure or for people to realize what all data is available in Looker. And so we took a lot of time and we came up with all of these onboarding tutorial videos which tell you how to use Looker from Coursera's context. So we have Coursera's data and we have all of these screen share videos where you can actually see, okay, this is how you get to the monthly active users number or enrollments number. So we kind of kept the long-term empathy for people in mind rather than solving all the short-term problems. The other example was also that I personally feel like a lot of people blame data for everything, but data in itself does not want to be bad. Like, it doesn't want to screw up the numbers. It's usually the people who are handling it that need to make sure that they understand the data and how is it going to play out in your projects. So as a data analyst or anybody working with data, have empathy for your data as well. Take some time to understand it and realize the potential and how it can help you contribute to your product in a meaningful way, is what I'd say.
Not to demonize it or give it any agency.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of numbers made by people.
I know.
Cool. How about yourself?
So mine is actually a little similar to Juhi's last point. It's that I think the person needs to learn as much about the business as possible. Numbers can mean anything you want them to mean if you don't know what they're tying to. So it's really important to learn as much about the business as you can as soon as you really get into it. I mean, you're going to figure out the different technologies that you need to work with. You're going to figure out the different syntax that you might need. Thank God there's always Google. But it's important to really understand what those numbers mean. The more you know about the business, the more intelligent insights you can get from the data. There's a good chance that you may come up with, some metrics or some information you want to learn about the data that the business hasn't even thought of yet, because they may not know that getting that is even possible. So it's really important to learn as much about the data, about the company, as it is to learn about the data.
Absolutely, and that's one huge trend we're seeing across the entire enterprise, which is this digital transformation where data roles are becoming more and more strategic. It's not execution, pulling reports. It's what is the business value that I can help my business managers or business unit leaders make better decisions with. So absolutely hear that 100%.
Oh, can I add another point?
Yeah, of course.
Actually, just to that, I also realized that the more you know about the business, if you understand as you were saying, the needs of the different departments, that's going to help you drive adoption a lot. Because if you find something in the data and you're like, oh, you know what? I think sales would really like to have this as a dashboard. And you share it with them. Now, that one main person in sales that you shared it with is going to share it with their team. And so word gets around. When something's actually valuable, it kind of sells itself. So it's easier for you to share the value of the tool and the data than how to actually use it. If you show them what it's good for them, as opposed to what it's good for you, the adoption will kind of take care of itself.
Very cool. And one last parting thought, I think. So similarly how data analysts are becoming more and more strategic, they're also becoming more and more like developers. And what we're seeing among all our LookML developers is that they're building and being able to enhance their products with Looker, but also JavaScript and other software languages. And this is one exciting trend we're seeing too. So it's a very cool career transformation that's happening across roles and functions and organization-wide as well.